Hello, everybody. I hope you guys are, you've had good weeks, and welcome to the Nomiki show. I am doing a live on Friday, unlike Thursday, because we had a little bit of a technical issue yesterday, and we're trying to adjust it right now. So I'm out of the studio because I wanted to give all of our technology a little bit of a break and do this from my phone. So just if you are not already liking and subscribing and sharing, all the things that you need to do, make sure to click the alerts button on here on the Nomiki show. And if you're not a patron already, join us on patreon.com. We have a show coming up this weekend. Patrons get early shows. So it's Juneteenth. This is an extremely important, it is now a holiday. Not official yet, but it's an important day in which so many of us are honoring the emancipation, or the supposed emancipation, of Black Americans, and honoring the massacre that existed, that got us to this moment. And I think we would be negligent not to talk about the fact that Donald Trump, our president, it's not even a dog whistle. It is an extraordinary insult on Black Americans. He has decided to host his first rally of all the rallies, right? So we've been in COVID, and Donald Trump has decided to host a rally, which was initially supposed to be today on Juneteenth, and he's decided to postpone it in Tulsa, which was, a sacred place. So while this is all going on, the backdrop of this, breaking news just happened. I'm just looking at my computer if you're wondering what I'm doing. What has happened is the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, the New York Times is reporting that from Minneapolis to Buffalo, Homeland Security officials have dispatched drones, helicopters, and airplanes to monitor Black Lives Matter protests. This is not new throughout the history of the U.S. DHS is a newer agency. I believe it is the newest agency that we have. And there's been a very questionable history of DHS over the years, spying on folks, and now they're spying on protesters. If the CIA doesn't do that enough, if the FBI hasn't done that enough, now the DHS has now been caught doing this. So the New York Times cites that the DHS, Department of Homeland Security, deployed helicopters, airplanes, and drones over 15 cities where demonstrators gathered to protest the death of George Floyd, logging at least 270 hours of surveillance, far more than previously revealed, according to the Customs and Border Protection data. Now remember, DHS was set up after 9/11 as some sort of homeland security in the face of terrorism. First off, why is DHS even concerned about these protests? These are organized, peaceful protests by activists who've been organizing on the ground in all of these cities for years. There has been no illustration or even the government has not said that there's any form of, quote, terrorism, which is ultimately what DHS is there to, I guess, investigate. And I'm saying that loosely, but that is their intent. And so this is a nationwide operation that took place over the last few weeks to fight off the protests, to investigate and to spy on them. Now, if we were to recall, in the 60s, the FBI, investigated Malcolm X. They investigated Black activists, Black organizers, of whether they were proclaimed or not communists. This is not a new thing in our history. MLK, of course, Dr. MLK was spied on, and many of these documents, these files, were released 30, 40 years later. I actually know somebody who's a journalist who said that his grandmother, they just got her file. She had not admitted she was a communist. I mean, who knows what she was personally, but they had a file on her for years because she was a feminist and she was organizing in the feminist movement. So there is a history of this in America, and now it may not be through the FBI, it may not be through the CIA, although it might still be. There's another agency doing this, DHS. So in the third paragraph of this New York Times article, I really can't even say this out loud without being angry. It's just one piece of a nationwide operation that deployed resources usually used to patrol the U.S. border for smugglers and illegal crossings. Now remember, when the DHS was set up, it was about terrorism. It wasn't about undocumented people crossing the border. It evolved every inch of the way. It evolves in its purpose. So it's usually used to patrol the U.S. All these drones, these helicopters are used to patrol the U.S. border for smugglers and illegal crossings. Aircraft film demonstrations in Dayton, Ohio, New York City, Buffalo, and Philadelphia, among other cities, sending video footage in real time to control centers managed by the Air and Marine Operations, a branch of the Customs and Border Protection Agency. The footage was then fed into a digital network managed by the Homeland Security Department called, quote, Big Pipe, which can be accessed by other federal agencies and local police department to use in future investigations. So this isn't just a DHS Homeland Security thing. This isn't about terrorism. This isn't about border crossings. This is about DHS spying. And then don't forget, just a few weeks ago, they said that DHS was going to share information with other agencies. So this information is now being used with who knows who else in other agencies. Maybe it's the CIA, maybe it's the FBI, we don't know. But also local police departments. There is a very close relationship between all of these agencies, the military, and our local police departments. So if you showed up at a protest in any of these cities, the 15 cities that are listed, you are very likely to be, you have been monitored, and it could be used in the future. So say this all dies down, we have reforms 5 years from now, something else happens, they have your face. Don't forget there's facial recognition technology that Amazon up until recently was leasing out to the government. For what? Who are you protecting us from? The protesters are not. They are not the opposition here. You show up with a sign and your baby saying you stand with BLM, and you are now on these lists, and I'm pretty sure this has probably been going on for a while now. The National Guard in the District of Columbia has already reached a preliminary conclusion that a lack of clarity in commands led to one of its medical evacuation helicopters swooping low. Medical evacuation helicopter! Swooping low on protesters in the nation's capital. So they're not even using the allocated equipment. You know, what I love is I love listening to these Republicans say, well, you know, the allocation of resources, we hate to see these studies where they have like mice on treadmills or shrimp in buckets or whatever these stupid Fox News segments are about government waste. And it's like usually like a couple $1,000. And they do entire segments about how the government wasted $15,000 studying mice on treadmills and, you know, studying the heart rates, which was probably about some sort of health thing. And they love to focus on these things, but they don't focus on how when you have a line item in a budget, it is supposed to be allocated for a very specific purpose. So you have a medical helicopter, a helicopter that, let's just say, might save somebody in a remote area who's hiking, caught in one of these wildfires, you know, hiking and gets a little bit too close. Or one of these it could be somebody who has COVID, who's in a remote part. Who knows what these who doesn't have access to a hospital nearby, or maybe the beds are filled up. But no, these medical helicopters right now are being used to spy on peaceful protesters that show up with their children, their babies, that are showing these homemade signs saying that they stand with Black Lives Matter. They stand with justice. Are you kidding me? Thank you so much for your love here. I am trying to read it, but I believe it's in another language. Hi, Nomiki, finally made it before the end of the stream. I love your work and the intelligent badassery that you exude. You're a role model in the U.S. today. I'm very grateful to you. Thank you. I'm doing whatever I can, as we all are, in these crazy moments. This news infuriated me. I wanted to come on and specifically talk about Donald Trump and his strategic abuse of his power, and he's doing it right now. Thank you so much, Bigolameo. It's hard for me to see on my phone, so please, I hope you're not insulted because I'm reading. You know, Donald Trump and let's not forget his dear friends, Steve Bannon and Stephen Miller, the two Steves who like to line up with the Nazis. Stephen Miller, you know, being in charge of Black Lives Matter strategy. I don't know what, I'm not even going to name the official title because it's bullshit. But Stephen Miller, we believe, is the mind behind this Juneteenth strategy, which Donald Trump thinks nobody knew about before him. Maybe nobody in his Nazi circles knew about it before him, but I'm pretty sure most folks who've been paying attention to the news, most African Americans in this country, are very aware of the day that celebrates the emancipation of those who were enslaved in the United States. And Donald Trump, not only does he want to take credit for educating Americans on Juneteenth, but he decides to throw a rally, his first rally in a sacred place where there was a massacre that led to Juneteenth, that led to the emancipation of slaves. This was not a coincidence. This was a strategy by a group of people in the U.S. government right now, in the White House, who are advising our president, a group of people who are there specifically to orchestrate white supremacy. Because you don't do something like that. That's not a dog whistle anymore. That is a giant F-U to the movement that is organizing across the country and has been organizing across the country, that knows very well what Donald Trump is trying to do here. Whether or not Donald Trump even knows what his government, it's Stephen Miller, how old is he? 34 years old? Stephen Miller, who thinks this is a game, who thinks that this is like his ability to use the most powerful office in the land and possibly in the world for military reasons, that he is going to use his position of influence to play a game, to troll Americans? That is beyond white privilege. That's white supremacy. He's exercising white supremacy. He's exercising white supremacy. So let's just be very clear. Donald Trump's rally, you show up to the rally, you're silent about the rally, you have friends or family who are like, well, I'm still voting for Trump because the economy, whatever their BS is, because I hear it all the time. I'm in Arizona right now. Whatever the reason is, remind them that he has a white supremacist advising many, but he has a specific white supremacist, specific Nazi, a guy who is literally in Nazi chat rooms, organizing, telling him of all the days to have a rally. Not only is it premature because of COVID, not only do we expect every single person at that rally as a Trump supporter to show up without a mask, not only is that a risk, but he's going to pick a sacred day. Oh, but then once he was caught, they decided to change the date to the next day. In a sacred location, during a sacred moment where we have seen unprecedented uprisings in solidarity with Black lives. There is no room right now for, I don't care if you're a Republican who doesn't like Trump, there is no room to support this man based on these actions. If you know someone in your family who calls themselves a Republican and is supporting the Republican Party because of lower taxes, but doesn't think that they're racist, that supports Black Lives Matter, you remind them what their president is doing right now. The leader of the Republican Party. If you're a Republican, you know a Republican who likes Marco Rubio or likes Martha McSally or likes, liked John McCain or hell likes Mitt Romney. They are members of that party. And the party is being led by this man who is taking cues from Stephen Miller. The lines are clear right now. And if there's any out, I can't believe I'm saying this, if there's any out that these pseudo-Republicans, these rhinos, whatever the more centrist Republicans have, it's in Joe Biden. And that's clearly, I don't support Joe Biden. That's another live for another time talking about his vice presidential pick. But this is what is on the line right now. You have a man who has used a department, DHS, as his legal loophole to spy on folks based on no terrorism, based on no border crossings as he used. That's what all of that equipment was allocated for. When they decided to say, yes, your budget is extended because we don't want to build a wall, so we're going to monitor the border. For whatever reason that they justified, cartels, drug trafficking, human trafficking, whatever the reason was at the time, to allocate that type of technology and equipment at the border. It was not to spy on peaceful protesters in other cities, thousands of miles from the border. We should be outraged right now, and we should be calling our lawmakers, especially the ones who are not facing a challenge, to voice their outrage. I remember when Muslims were being spied on in New York. And we had leaders like Kirsten Gillibrand and Cory Booker who commended that. And it took the Associated Press to report on it and win a Pulitzer for them to change their tune. This is the kind of Pulitzer-winning story, but the problem is it's happening every single day. And that is what fascism is. That is what fascism is. Every day. It trickles in. It numbs us. We get frustrated. He wants us to be fearful of showing up on the streets because of imaging. He wants us to be scared of what he could possibly do in the next 4 years if he were to win. So our Democrats right now and our Republicans and Mitt Romney, change your party, dude. If you don't believe in this, then don't side with it. You're still a senator raising money in that Senate committee for Mitch McConnell's picks, which are just backing up Donald Trump's choices. You might be an independent voice during certain votes, but you are still running around the country raising money for your colleagues in the Republican Senate, who are just going to back up what Donald Trump is doing right now, which is listening to Stephen Miller. It is fascism. And you Democrats who are running on being bipartisan right now, not the time. Not the time to be bipartisan, because you're basically saying, I am going to cut a deal with the fascist. I don't want to hear that ever again. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine? Can you imagine if in Europe you had supposed leftist leaders saying, well, we know to get elected, we have to be able to cut deals. We have to cut deals with Mussolini and his party. No. You're on the party line with Mussolini, you're in line with Mussolini. If you're cutting deals with Mussolini's party, you're in line with Mussolini. That's how history is going to reflect on this moment. So yes, it means a lot when Hillary Clinton endorses an Eliot Engel who cuts deals with the Republicans. It means a lot when Tom Suozzi, a Democratic congressman, is in a caucus with Republicans. That means a lot in this moment. And that is why we support a Melanie DeRigo. All of this stuff makes a big difference. Solidarity is not a rallying cry. It is not about movements. It's not a party. It's about fascism or not fascism. You pick a side. And that's what this comes down to. I'm so angry right now that I'm so angry that, you supposedly have these military officials who are stepping up and challenging Donald Trump and his actions. John Bolton, who's a total kook, that he's stepping up right now, right? Yet somehow this made it through the chain of command. So I want to know, how did this break through? Surely Stephen Miller is not calling the shots, and every single person in DHS is listening, and every single person that has the information that DHS is sharing in other departments and agencies. Surely there is a chain of command here. Yes, the buck stops at Donald Trump, but supposedly there are all these government officials who disagree and are going rogue. But I want to know, why aren't they stopping at the monitoring of protesters, peaceful protesters, which I know so many of you have been? I want to know why no one stepped up about that. It seems to be a personality thing with Trump. It seems to be that, like, well, you know, he's not following the traditional, you know, code of conduct, and that he isn't passing things by us first. But this is DHS using Border Patrol technology to spy on protesters, peaceful protesters from above. Sounds a hell of a lot like monitoring phone calls and phone records and apps. It sounds a lot like, you know, playing with algorithms so protesters and activists don't get the clicks and the likes anymore and the shares and the views. Sure sounds like fascism to me. So, if we're not going to be outraged about this, and if the libertarians who supposedly believe in free speech and don't want an expanded military-industrial complex, I want to hear them step up. I want to hear the Ron Pauls step up. Because that's how we're going to make change at this point. It can't just be the protesters on the streets versus Trump. It has to be this massive solidarity. This is about our institutions falling apart, not because he doesn't follow the code of conduct, but because he literally is using technology specifically allocated for other reasons that are also not justified to spy and monitor on peaceful protesters. Maybe we have to wait for Mitt Romney's face to show up in the CIA because he was out there protesting on the streets. Maybe that's what we have to wait for. Maybe that's where the outrage will come. Have a wonderful weekend, guys. Stay safe, stay well, stay healthy. What's up, Sam Cedar, the Majority Report? See you chiming in there. Much love. I'll see you guys on Tuesday on the Majority Report. We have a new show going up on Monday. If you are not a patron, please go to patreon.com/The Nomiki Show. For as low as $5 a month, we have mugs and bags and stickers, all the different things. If you're out on the streets, just be careful, okay? All right, take care, guys. Have a nice weekend.